I'm okay.
In light of the yucky weather, I decided to start a warm, comfy project indoors. This skirt was made from an old comforter that I had just picked the stitches out of and remade into a skirt. Definitely needed a couple of lovely pieces to pair it with. So I printed out and purchased a vest pattern. We'll see how this goes.
This is a really pretty fabric. It's ripped, but I think I can do something. I don't think he cares about this. We're just gonna take this with us.
All right, so here I have my pattern piece cut out, and then I've got some mock-up fabric down here, just some old pillowcases in my collection. And if you haven't seen my collection yet, you know what, consider yourself lucky because it's ridiculous. So I've got the apron fabric here, and let's get started. The vest pattern ended up needing way too many alterations, so I sacrificed this old one to the pattern gods. This was an old bed skirt for a queen bed we no longer have, so I decided to use this as the outer fabric. For the lining part of the vest, I decided to use the lining that was on the bed skirt, and it seemed to work out pretty nicely. Lining was attached to the main fabric using a back stitch, and then all the pieces stitched together. Then to cover all of the raw edges on the pieces, I decided to make myself some bias binding out of long strips of the main fabric. These get folded in half, pressed, and then each side folded in half again, pressed, and then pressed to the middle. These are whipped stitched onto the edges of the fabric to cover up the raw edges, and I'm only catching the lining pieces so the stitches don't show through to the other side. And then I cursed my existence for being 2 inches too short and having to make a whole nother strip of bias just for that 2 inches. Once that was all finished, it was time to put in the buttons and the buttonholes for closures. Then I ripped out all of my basting stitches so they wouldn't be seen on the finished garment. And the vest is complete. Now it's time to move on to the apron. If it's a loosely woven and very slippery fabric, which can be hard to get straight lines on, what I'll do is I'll draw one thread through the fabric and create a gap in the weave. And that makes it a lot easier to be able to get in with a pair of scissors and cut a straight line. This is a time-consuming and tedious process, but the straight lines are worth it. I cut out a long piece, the width of the tablecloth that I'm using, and measured down to where I wanted the hem to fall, and then cut along my straight line that I'd created with the thread. I also cut out another 3-inch strip to serve as the waistband and the ties around the back. I gathered the top in to fit the waist measurement going across the front of my body as wide as I wanted it to go. Then I stitched the waistband to the front side of the apron and whip stitched all of the little pleats down so that it would sit flat and nice against the front of my waist. Then I marked a line at 1/2 inch in and stitched everything down with a back stitch to create that smooth front line on the waistband. Then the waistband is folded back toward the back side of the apron with the seam allowance tucked in to hide the raw edge, and then whip stitched into place. I'm taking care to go in very shallow, only picking up a couple of threads so that my stitches don't show through to the front of the apron. Apparently, because I was so over ironing at this point, I decided not to press and to just tuck the raw edges of the seams on the inside to stitch everything down for the ties that go around the back of the apron. These are then stitched into place with an invisible stitch or a ladder stitch, depending on whichever term you decide to use, so that they wouldn't show through on either side of the ribbon ties. I tucked in the raw edges of the ends of the ties at an angle so that it kind of created a little point at the bottom of the tie. The bottom of the apron already had a seam, but I was afraid that it would unravel. So I folded it over and then whip stitched it into place. Again, just picking up a couple of threads, taking care that my stitches would be barely seen from the other side. And with that, the vest and the apron are complete. I'm overall pretty happy with this project and how it turned out. There are a few things I'd do differently. The shirt was just one that I'd had tucked in the back of my closet, so I didn't make that, but I do have plans for that in the future. So if you'd like to see more videos like this, let me know.